Have you ever felt surrounded by people who have stopped thinking? People who live on autopilot, who repeat ideas without questioning them, who accept the world as it is, even if it is falling apart? Look around you. Haste has become a virtue. Superficiality is the norm. Opinion has become currency and silence, a luxury that few can afford. Now imagine waking up one day and realizing that most people around you no longer question anything. They don't want to know if what they hear is true, if what they repeat makes sense, if what they defend has depth. They just echo, react, respond, without thinking. This is the silent collapse we are experiencing. The human mind, once a tool for discernment and evolution, has been anesthetized, accelerated to exhaustion, saturated with data, and instead of clarity, it reaps confusion. Instead of awareness, conformity. Philosopher Noam Chomsky warned us about this when he spoke of the manufacture of consent. When a society is trained to consume without questioning, it not only loses its freedom, it surrenders its soul. And no one needs chains to dominate anymore. All you have to do is disable doubt. But how did we get to this point? One of the most profound causes is information overload. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin has shown that we process 5 times more data per day today than we did just a few decades ago. And what does that mean? That our minds, faced with excess, take shortcuts. They replace analysis with habit, reason by impulse, thinking by belonging. And so collective stupidity is born, not because of a lack of intelligence, but because of fatigue, because of saturation, because of a dangerous addiction to quick answers and instant validation. We no longer think. We follow signs, likes, reactions, voices that shout louder, even when they say nothing. Deep reading is disappearing. Long texts have become threats. Patience has become the enemy. Marianne Wolf, a brain researcher, has demonstrated how we are losing the ability to focus, to dive in, to sustain attention. Our brains are being reconfigured to skip, scan, and scatter. And without focus, there is no thought, only noise. Think about it. When was the last time you read something in its entirety without picking up your phone? When was the last time you heard an uncomfortable idea and, instead of reacting, stopped to digest it? These habits, which formed the basis of lucidity, are being lost. And with them, we lose the most important thing, the autonomy of the mind. Because those who don't think for themselves, think with someone else's head. And those who outsource their own consciousness outsource their own freedom. But what if there's still time to wake up? What if this pain you feel, this sense that something is wrong, that we are all hypnotized, is just the beginning of the cure? Then take a deep breath. Because from now on, we are going to cut through this fog. And you will see, with uncomfortable clarity, how we have become prisoners of distraction. And more than that, how we can, and must, free ourselves. Notice how everything has been designed to prevent you from thinking. You wake up, pick up your phone, and before you even look at the sky, you've been bombarded with notifications, headlines, opinions, and judgments. Your brain, still unaware of who you are that day, is already reacting. And that's what the system wants. A human being in response mode. A human being who feels without understanding, who agrees without reflecting, who consumes without digesting. Thinking hurts. And in a culture that glorifies comfort, pain has become the enemy, including the pain of thinking. Carl Sagan already warned that we live in a society that is deeply dependent on science and technology, but where almost no one understands science or technology. It's not just ignorance, Mike, it's the decline of the ability to question what sustains the world around us. Thinking has become a threat. Reasoning has become heresy. Critical thinking has been replaced by empty certainties, catchphrases, and slogans that avoid the discomfort of doubt. Education, which should liberate, often imprisons. John Taylor Gatto, educator and critic of the traditional school model, stated that schools do not teach children to think, they teach them to obey. From an early age, we are evaluated not by the depth of our ideas, but by our ability to repeat. Originality is punished. Curiosity is seen as a distraction. And so we learn that in order to survive, it is better to go with the flow and keep quiet. But it is not only school that shapes us. The fear of social exclusion silences us more than any teacher. At work, in friendships, on the internet, we learn that questioning can mean losing. Losing status, affection, belonging. And so we silence ourselves. And over time, silence becomes a habit. And habit becomes anesthesia. Erich Fromm said that many people secretly wish to escape freedom. Because thinking for oneself requires taking responsibility. And responsibility for many is unbearable. When you think deeply, you can no longer blame others for your ignorance. You can no longer hide behind the crowd. You are naked before the truth. And that is why so many people choose distraction. TV shows, memes, scandals, shallow debates, anything that takes them away from the only thing that would set them free, confronting their own thoughts. Social media has intensified this process. What was born to connect now separates. The algorithm doesn't want you to think, it wants you to react. And the faster the better. It wants your anger, your outrage, your likes. The truth? It has no commercial value. What goes viral isn't lucidity, it's shouting. Marshall McLuhan already said it. The medium is the message. The way we receive information shapes the way we think. And today, everything is designed for superficiality, endless scrolling, ready-made answers, no pause, no contemplation. In this world where everything screams, those who silence themselves to think become aberrations. But it is in this silence that humanity is reborn. Because thinking, deep down, is an act of courage. The courage to face discomfort. The courage to lose certainties. The courage to say, I don't know now, but I want to know. And it is this courage that we will now explore. Because the biggest mistake you can make is to continue living on autopilot. Most people believe they are thinking, when in fact they are just repeating. Repeating inherited opinions, certainties that have never been questioned, mantras that reinforce group identity. And this is not because we are weak. It happens because we have been conditioned. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in economics, demonstrated that the brain operates in two systems. One fast, emotional, automatic, the other slow, analytical, and demanding. And guess which one we use most of the time? The fast one. The one that judges before understanding. The one that reacts before reflecting. This system is perfect for saving energy. But it is also the shortest route to self-deception. Because thinking slowly, deeply hurts. It requires effort. It requires us to face internal contradictions. And what the modern world wants to avoid most is the pain of conscience. Politicians, companies, and digital platforms know this. They don't speak to your reason, they speak to your instincts. They use inflammatory words, shocking images, and simplistic slogans. They know that once you believe something, your mind will defend that belief tooth and nail, even if it's a lie. This is called confirmation bias. You seek out, select, and believe only what reinforces your current worldview. How often do you actually read something that challenges your beliefs? How often do you listen to an opposing argument with a sincere desire to understand it, not just to refute it? Be honest. Most people don't want truth. They want comfort. And the truth, almost always, is uncomfortable. Another destructive phenomenon is groupthink. Irving Janis demonstrated how even brilliant minds can make disastrous decisions when they are inside a bubble where dissent is dangerous. To maintain harmony, people remain silent. And when everyone is silent, error becomes consensus. But every advance in history has been the work of those who dared to think differently. Galileo, Darwin, Nietzsche, Luther King, all were ridiculed, persecuted, rejected, but they thought, even in the face of hostility, even without any guarantee of acceptance, because they knew that the truth does not need approval, only courage. And that's what you need right now. Because thinking critically today is an act of rebellion. It means putting your integrity above convenience. It means being willing to pay the price of lucidity in a culture that rewards blindness. You may be misunderstood. You may be isolated. You may be attacked. But you may also experience something rare, the dignity of being free. And freedom is not doing what you want. It is knowing why you do what you do. Thinking is the beginning of that freedom, the only antidote to manufactured chaos. And maybe after all this, you'll begin to understand why there's so much interest in making you stop thinking. Why do so many people feel lost, anxious, and empty, even though we live in the most information-rich era in history? The answer isn't in what we've gained, but in what we've abandoned. We've lost the habit of introspection. We've lost the ability to hold a question without wanting to erase it. We've lost our inner silence, that space where thoughts germinate before becoming certainty. Our internal dialogue has been replaced by notifications. Our curiosity has been replaced by distraction. Our wisdom has been replaced by speed. And with that, we have lost ourselves. You have outsourced your thinking. You have surrendered your attention to algorithms. You have let your mind be guided by likes, trends, and ready-made narratives. But no feed knows who you are. No headline reveals what is true for you. No majority can replace your awakened consciousness. That's why the first step is to develop awareness. Metacognition. Observe what you think as you think. Ask yourself honestly, is this thought mine or inherited? Am I seeking to understand or just reacting? Am I willing to be wrong if it brings me closer to the truth? This kind of questioning does not weaken, it strengthens. Because thinking critically is not attacking, it is investigating. It is not resisting on impulse, but exploring with courage. And one of the most powerful exercises for this investigation is dialectical thinking, the ability to hold two opposing ideas in your mind and analyze them without destroying them. This requires emotional maturity. It requires inner silence. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "To understand the immeasurable, the mind must be extraordinarily quiet." In this silence, wisdom is born, not that of diplomas, but that of raw lucidity. But let's be honest, thinking like this is not popular. It does not generate instant applause. It does not go viral. Because true thinking moves slowly, and slowly in this world has become synonymous with weakness. But it is precisely in this decelerated rhythm that depth is revealed. Thinking critically is not memorizing philosophical phrases. It is opening yourself up to discomfort. It is reading long texts. It is confronting opposing ideas. It is accepting that doubt is often more dignified than certainty. And that requires humility. The humility to say, "I don't know, but I am willing to learn." This humility is rare, because we live in an age where arrogance masquerades as opinion, where everyone talks but almost no one listens, where everyone reacts but few reflect. Speed has killed patience. Noise has killed listening. The true thinker does not shout. He observes. He immerses himself. He resists the urge to win debates and prefers to understand, because he knows that understanding is not a war, it is a journey. And that is what our society has forgotten, that the human mind was not made to repeat, but to discover. That the greatest revolution does not begin in the streets, but in the silence between a question and an answer. And that lucidity, though lonely, is the only way back home. That is why, before we seek to transform the world, we must transform the way we think. Because no system is stronger than the mind that questions it. And no darkness is more dangerous than that where no one dares to raise a question. Revolution begins with a question. And that question begins now. Do you really know why you believe what you believe? Or are you just repeating what you were told was true? That's the question no one wants to ask. Because it dismantles everything. It destabilizes the comfort of identity, ideology, belonging. Critical thinking requires more than reason. It requires spiritual courage. Yes, spiritual. Because you will have to give up easy applause, comforting certainty, the warmth of the tribe that says, "We are right, they are wrong." The truth is that most people don't want to know the truth. They want to preserve the image they have of themselves. That's why reason disappears. And criticism is seen as a personal offense. When you question an idea, people feel like you're attacking their soul. That's not sensitivity. It's a pathological attachment to one's own narrative. But here's the thing that no one has told you. You are not your ideas. You are not your party. You are not your religion. You are not your social bubble. You are something much deeper. And it is precisely this something that only appears when you have the courage to think outside the box of what you have been told is acceptable. Thinking today is a spiritual act because it requires going through the hell of the ego. It requires facing your own ignorance, your own inconsistency, your own fear of change. That's why so many people prefer to laugh at memes, follow charismatic leaders, repeat ready-made phrases. It's easier to appear intelligent than to be honest, easier to win debates than to hold a doubt in silence. And this silence is necessary, because without it, there is no thought, only noise. True lucidity is born from pause, from the space between impulse and response. And there, without an audience, without likes, without certainties, freedom is born. Carl Jung said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And he was right. The unconscious rules while the conscious sleeps. And you, distracted, become merely a reflection of your surroundings, repeating the ideas of others. But when you stop, when you ask yourself sincerely, "Why do I believe this?" something breaks. This break hurts, but it also liberates. You begin to see the system behind the system, the layers of manipulation, the speeches disguised as empathy, the data that hides intentions, the phrases that condition, and you no longer react as you did before. You are no longer offended as you were before. You no longer defend as you did before, because now you see. And those who see can no longer pretend to be blind. They can no longer obey out of inertia. They can no longer think lazily. You begin to build your truth, not a ready-made, imposing, absolute truth, but a hard-won truth, a truth that does not seek to be imposed but lived. And at that moment you become dangerous, because you cease to be predictable, because you begin to think deeply. And in a world of surfaces, depth is a threat. So don't expect applause. Expect silence. Expect discomfort. And keep going anyway, because contrary to what you've been told, thinking doesn't distance you from people. It brings you closer to those who have also chosen to wake up. Thinking is not just an intellectual exercise. It is an act of resistance. It is the intimate decision not to sell yourself for comfort, not to hide behind borrowed certainties, not to live as a reflection of your environment. Thinking today is a spiritual act because it requires sacrifice. Sacrifice of approval, of group identity, of the illusion of security. Because when you start to really think, the world around you begins to crumble. The structures you believe to be solid reveal themselves to be fragile. Discourses that seemed noble show their hidden interests. Bonds that seemed affectionate reveal themselves to be conditioned by your emotional obedience. Thinking, truly thinking, unmasks. First, the world, then yourself. And that's where many give up. Because thinking deeply brings no guarantees. It brings questions. It brings no certainties. It brings layers. It brings no social acceptance. It brings solitude. But it is in this lonely space that you rediscover something you had lost. Your own mind. The philosopher Carl Jung spoke about shadow integration, about the act of looking inward with radical honesty and facing everything that has been repressed, denied, distorted. Because that is what thinking does. It brings light to what was hidden. But contrary to what people expect, light does not bring immediate comfort. It burns, it exposes, it liberates, but it also hurts. That is why thinking has become rare, because it requires you to take off your mask. And no one wants to take off their mask in a world where everyone lives by appearances. But you are not everyone. You have come this far because something inside you refuses to live asleep. Something inside you still wants to understand, to delve deeper, to awaken. And maybe you've already realized, the world isn't interested in you thinking. It's interested in you consuming, reacting, obeying. But there's a silent rebellion happening. A revolution without flags, without noise, made by those who in silence have returned to listening to their own thoughts. These are the truly dangerous ones, because they don't shout, they don't follow, they don't imitate, they perceive. They perceive the manipulation behind the headlines, the power game behind the discourse, the conditioning behind the trends. They are few, but they are lucid. And lucidity, in a world of masks, is revolutionary. This revolution begins with a choice. The choice to think when everyone wants you to react. The choice to pause when everything wants speed. The choice to say, "I don't know," when everyone pretends to know. The choice to be whole, even if it leaves you alone. You've come this far. Don't stop now. If this content sparked something inside you, like the video, it shows that there are still people willing to traverse the darkness of ignorance in search of lucidity. If you want to contribute to this project, support it with any amount. Your awareness is priceless, but your action strengthens it. And write a word in the comments that proves your commitment to this journey. Awake mind, because that's what you're becoming, and the world needs more like you.